So honored to have Mayor Pete Buttigieg joining us in the studio, fresh off last night's very late Democratic debate. So thank you for being here early.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
We appreciate it. Let's dive right in. I know we're short on time. So last night you talked about the American dream, saying it's not happening as much here in America. We know in Las Vegas, in Nevada, we're struggling. Rent prices are going up. In fact, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition says Nevada is one of the worst for affordable housing for the extremely low income. Right. How do we fix that wealth gap?
That's right. So this is why I've put out a plan on making sure that we build more affordable housing. But it's partly about the price of housing. It's partly about income. We've got to make sure that people are getting paid more. Sometimes we talk about the economy in very complicated ways when there are very simple problems. The minimum wage needs to go up. Workers need to be empowered to organize, to bargain. I support labor unions like the Culinary Union here in Las Vegas that has done such a good job of lifting up workers, but we've got a long way to go. This is not a good economy until one job is enough. And for far too many Americans, that's still not the case. It's an example of what needs to change right now. You know, President Trump likes to beat his chest and talk about how great the economy is because the stock market's looking good. And I'm glad the stock market's looking good, but what good is that if it's not getting to most of us? I want us to have a fairer economy and invest in the things we all need: transportation, housing, education, so that the next generation can have a shot at the American dream too.
Let's talk about polling. You did very well in Iowa. You did very well in New Hampshire. Right now, top 5, depending on which poll you're looking at. Nevada looks a little different than Iowa and New Hampshire. We're much more diverse, 30% of our population Latino. We, in fact, look very similar to California. Do you expect what happens here with our caucus to look very similar to Super Tuesday when California comes in?
I think so. One of the reasons I'm really excited to be campaigning here is this is the most racially diverse state yet in terms of the calendar of the states where we've been having these votes. Strong Latino community, larger African American population than the last couple of states we were in, engaging the AAPI voters here, Asian Pacific Islanders, and very diverse groups, you know, who have their own stories within the Latino community, for example. Everyone from Puerto Ricans who are U.S. citizens, largely frustrated by the way Puerto Rico is being treated, to a lot of people with mixed status, maybe Mexican origin families who are dealing with the failure of our immigration system to take care of people. Central American people, so many who are bringing their skills, their gifts, their talents to America, and yet America has struggled to include everybody. Part of what I want to deliver from the White House is a future where everybody belongs, where everybody is treated equally, and where everybody is lifted up. And having those conversations here in Nevada and on into the states ahead is a very important part of this campaign.
So what you see here, what ends up happening here on Saturday, you think that will relate very similar to our state to the west?
I think so, yes. Every state is different. Every state has different concerns, but there are also things I'm hearing everywhere I go. People want to know what's going to happen to their health care. They want to know if they're going to be able to earn more. They want to know what our presidential candidates are going to do to deliver solutions on climate change, which is a global challenge, but also one that in particular stands to harm people of color the most. They want to know what we're doing about gun violence. These are issues that cut across all of the different states we're visiting.
Last night you talked about leadership and you had this incredible quote that leadership is how you motivate other people to treat other people. We are in a very divisive climate. Social media is ugly. It's ugly on both sides of the aisle. Do you think leadership is what's going to bring this country back together?
Yeah, I think this election is not only about policy. I care a lot about policy. I'm a policy guy, but there's something else. There's something about the tone that's happening right now, especially in this White House, that is so toxic, and it pits people against each other. It sends this message of exclusion. And I think one of the most important jobs of the president is to bring people together, not just to get everybody to agree. We're never going to agree on everything. There are always going to be different parties with different views, but sending that signal from the highest office in the land that even if you disagree, especially if you disagree, we still belong to the same country and we still have a same shared fate. That's what I learned in the military, that serving alongside people totally different from me, we could still trust each other with our lives. And I think we need to get that spirit back in what it's like to participate in public life in America too.
If you were elected president, you would be one of the youngest, the youngest president, obviously the youngest on stage last night at these debates. Chuck Todd made mention of your status as a millennial, which in often conversation we hear that as a negative. I'm a millennial, you're a millennial. He asked if you're ignoring your generation by saying, hey, you know what, I used to really like Bernie before Bernie was cool. I love that, by the way. That made a lot of people laugh. But does age matter? Do you think that you're capturing an older audience by being so much younger?
You know, I don't think it matters that much, but I do think it's worth having the perspective of a new generation. You know, the generation I belong to did a lot of the service after the 9/11, the conflicts after 9/11. We're the generation that stands to lose the most from things like climate change, except for the generations coming next. In other words, my message to young people is, the longer you're planning to be here, the more you have at stake in choices that are about to be made on everything from climate to the economy. We've got to get this right. And, you know, often, in fact, every time, I think in the last half century, my party's actually won running for the White House, has been with a candidate who is opening doors to a new generation and offering a fresh and new perspective.
Interesting that you say that, because you said you don't have to be in Washington to matter.
Right. Yeah, I think I bring a perspective that comes from outside of Washington. I mean, I know my way around the place, but it's not where I spent most of my time in public service. I served as a mayor in a community that was facing a lot of struggles. We were a low-income community. We had, like so many places in the industrial Midwest, we were a factory town, and then we lost our factories. And leading our city, moving it forward, picking ourselves up after we were described in the national media as dying, and now we're growing, I think reflects a lot on the American experience more broadly. And part of what I'm offering is a perspective on how to get Washington to be able to hear more of us. Because right now, we've just come to accept this political warfare, and not nearly enough is getting done. It's why I think that a different kind of perspective, a different kind of experience is what we need most in the White House today.
Okay, all eyes here on Nevada. Of course, our caucus happening on Saturday. Thank you so much I know you've got a busy schedule. We appreciate you coming in this early. Mayor Pete Buttigieg here live on Wake Up with the CW. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.